To one who's coming on now, State Representative Greg Leding. He is a Democrat from Fayetteville. And, Greg, welcome to the program, sir.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
All right, so feel free to make most everybody they kind of make opening statements. So you feel free. You can be as long or as brief as you want. In general, what was your impression of the session 2017?
The most different of the ones that I've served. I mean, I came in 2011. The last time Democrats had a majority, it was a slim majority, and this was the first session we were in a super minority. So. Tried to make sure I had a proper mindset before going into session. I knew I didn't want to go down and do nothing, right? I mean, if you're going to, I live in Fayetteville. It's about 3 hours away from the Capitol. I've got a wife and a 13-month-old daughter. If I'm going to be spending that much time away from them, I want to be a part of governing. But obviously in this political climate, I was going to have to look for ways to work with colleagues across the aisle, and I think I was pretty successful. This was actually one of my most productive sessions in terms of legislation. I worked with the Republican chair of the House Revenue and Tax Committee to actually pass a tax relief bill for teachers. I worked with Senator Alan Clark and Representative Nikki Gates on a bill to help reduce cancer rates among firefighters. I worked with Republican Senator Lance Eads in Springdale on a bill to protect student athletes. And I put together what I think was a pretty broad coalition, both politically and geographically, on a bill to get insurance companies to help cover oral chemotherapy the same way they do other forms of chemotherapy. Arkansas was one of just 8 states where that wasn't the case. And specifically, I reached out to Republican Senator Greg Standridge from Russellville because I know that right now he's fighting his own battle against cancer, and he agreed to carry the bill in the Senate, and we were ultimately successful in getting that passed. So for me, I think it was a successful session, and honestly, I think overall it was a pretty good session. Obviously, I have a lot of constituents here in Fayetteville that aren't too pleased, particularly ones on campus with the passage of House Bill 1249.
I would imagine, yeah.
But but that's just what happens. When you're in the minority, and hopefully we can work to, hopefully there'll be no issues, right? Hopefully that legislation will do what Representative Collins intended to do, and there won't be any problems. But if there are, hopefully we can all work together to address them. And certainly Representative Collins has said over and over that he'll work to address anything if this does cause unintended problems.
Did you find it?
Otherwise,
go ahead. Sorry.
I was saying, otherwise, I think it was a really rather peaceful session, especially considering dust ups the last couple cycles over the private option / Arkansas Works.
You mentioned you mentioned 1249. You mentioned basically the campus carry bill, the gun bill.
Right.
Were you familiar with any of the process behind that? Let me ask you: did you think it was odd that the NRA got on board that bill, and then the correction legislation that came right after it, they had to come out against? I mean, that whole process. Do you have any comment on that?
I didn't necessarily find it surprising. I mean, obviously, the NRA, just like any lobbying group, has an interest, so they were pushing it. And I don't obviously know why they made the decision to oppose Senate Bill 726. I forget the number now, but the legislative fix that we passed there at the very end. Maybe it was just as simple as they thought they had gained more ground than they'd expected with 1249, and they didn't want to give it up. But I'm not sure why they came out and opposed it. But we learned, obviously, that the Southeastern Conference has at least maybe a little more influence on that particular issue. Yeah,
they certainly do. Outside groups certainly do in that case. I will say the NRA guy, learned kind of through the grapevine. The only reason they got on board 1249, which created a second-tier license, which required additional training. They were opposed to that like a week earlier. And then, because of the potential to carry, at a football stadium and that sort of thing, that's actually what got them on. That was the one thing, from what I hear, that actually got them on board with it. So when they immediately come back and try to take that away, I feel like that's that kind of explains why they were against it. Obviously, if that was the one
so
token,
they might have felt like they were
a
little bit of a betrayal. Or
yeah.
I'm honestly not convinced that there was a plan to remove the stadium, even as late as when Governor Hutchinson signed the bill. I didn't really sense any kind of movement there until the national media started making quite a bit of noise. But again, I wasn't privy to a lot of those conversations.
Well, yeah, and I mean, at the signing, not to get too focused on this one subject, but at the signing, Governor Hutchinson signed it, and then Senator Dismayne came up in that press conference and talked about the amendment he was working on,
Right.
to address some concerns. We're talking with State Representative Greg Leding. So you said in your opening statement that this was the most productive that session that you've had. And so given the massive Republican majorities and given the fact that you're a Democrat, did you expect to be this productive when you went down there this time?
Not necessarily, but I certainly didn't want to admit defeat before I'd even started. And even during my first term when Democrats were still...
The maintenance of a free society is a very difficult and complicated thing, and it requires a self-denying ordinance of the most extreme kind. It requires a willingness to put up with temporary evils on the basis of the subtle and sophisticated understanding that if you step in to do something about them, you not only may make them worse, but you will spread your tentacles and get bad results elsewhere.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. We lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
You're listening to the Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
Hey, folks, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being with us. My name is Paul. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We are building a liberty machine. And if you want to contribute to that machine, one of the ways you can do that is to call us or text us. The phone number 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. Also want to remind you that our Liberty Machine t-shirts are still on sale over at paulharrell.com. Just go to paulharrell.com and click on store, and you can get your Liberty Machine t-shirt there. They're very smooth-looking shirts, but it's a way you can help us contribute to building the Liberty Machine by letting people know where they're going to get the best coverage on Arkansas politics, the issues that affect Arkansas in the state. Again, the number 870-275-9799. All right. So the Washington Post has a story that has just come out detailing President Donald Trump's tax plan, his ideas, and a lot of it sounds really, really good. There's one aspect of this that's not going to sound very good to our Republican Governor Asa Hutchinson, if my feeling is correct. And that has to do with exempting our egregious 6.9% state income tax from our federal taxes. Let's see here. Let's go over this Washington Post story. Okay, Damian Paletta. President Trump on Wednesday proposed a dramatic overhaul of the tax code, calling for sharply lower rates for individuals and businesses, but also eliminating key tax breaks. That's the key. Eliminating key tax breaks, that's what you need to worry about. And I'll get to that here in a minute. The proposal is a one-page outline. Key details are left incomplete, but it presents an initial offer to begin negotiations with lawmakers as White House officials think reworking the tax code is one of their biggest priorities to boost economic growth. White House National Economic Council Director Gary Cohn said on Wednesday, "We have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to do something big and important on taxes." White House officials are ambitious, but the path to overhauling the tax code is riddled with political landmines. Budget experts say they believe the White House's plan would reduce federal revenue by so much that it would grow the debt by trillions of dollars. Let me stop right there. Senator Rand Paul has an excellent piece over at Breitbart. It's an exclusive Rand Paul editorial, and the headline there is "Real Men Cut Taxes." And specifically, he talks about, and I'm going to go over it later in the show, specifically, he talks about that Republicans used to want to cut taxes, and the definition of that meant less revenue going to the government. And he says that anytime you, quote, cut taxes, end quote, and it results in the same amount of revenue that's knowable coming into the government, that it's not an actual tax cut. And I thought, well, tell that to Governor Asa Hutchinson and others running this state, because they would disagree. Back to the Washington Post story, though. The central feature of the White House's plan would be a big reduction in tax rates for virtually all Americans and businesses. It would eliminate the 7 existing income tax brackets and replace them with 3 brackets containing new rates of 10%, 25%, and 35% based on someone's income. So it is still the progressive income scale, which is something that if you ever try to get rid of, the Democrats, they'd have a fit, really. White House, although I really do resent the fact that we don't have the equal protection clause is not applied to tax rates. We do segregate citizens based on their income, and so the tax laws apply differently to different people. But that's just my own opinion. White House officials haven't specified which income levels would hit the higher tax brackets. This is what they want to negotiate. That's part of negotiations. What else would it do? It would also roughly double the standard deduction. Now, I feel like this is pretty big news. So Donald Trump is proposing to double the standard deduction that Americans use to reduce their taxable income. The deduction for married couples would move from $12,600 to $24,000, meaning your standard deduction, meaning if you don't have tax deductions, essentially your mortgage interest, your charitable donations, and a few other things, if that contribution is not above $24,000, then you don't itemize. You would just take a $24,000 deduction from your taxable income. Now, that is big. And no doubt that would probably hurt states like ours that are in a bind because we have an egregious 6.9% income tax, because a part of this plan would be to eliminate our deducting what we pay from local taxes and state taxes. That's what the part of this Trump plan is, which essentially means that our legislature that meets once every 2 years refused to do income tax reform this last time, and now they have egg on their face. So now we have to wait till 2019 because they want to use a task force, and trust them, the task force will produce the results that you're wanting. Here it is right here, Washington Post. The White House plan would eliminate the alternative minimum tax and the estate tax. Fantastic that this is a plan to eliminate the death tax. End the death tax. Donald Trump is proposing to end the death tax. It would raise billions of dollars each year, but have, long target Republicans seeking to rip up the tax code. To offset, here we go. To offset some of the costs of the lower rates, Trump administration officials said they were proposing to eliminate virtually all tax deductions that Americans claim, provisions that they argued primarily benefited wealthier Americans. Cohn said they would preserve tax breaks that incentivize home ownership, retirement savings, and charitable giving, but almost all others would be jettisoned. This includes the tax deduction people can claim for the state and local taxes they pay each calendar year. These taxes can be particularly high in states with higher income taxes such as California and New York, and Arkansas. compared to our neighbors, Arkansas. We have a 6.9% state income tax. It's egregious. And under this plan, we would now no longer be able to deduct that from what we owe the feds. Now, some of that might be offset when you consider we're going from a $12,000 standard deduction to $24,000, but and I think that's great. But you understand what my point. The Arkansas legislature now has egg all over their face. The Republicans have egg all over their face if this were to go through, because we needed real tax reform, not what the governor wants to do and play a shell game where he finds a way to maintain the current funding level of the government and then being able to say, I gave tax cuts to veterans, I gave tax cuts to those making $21,000 or less, but in order to offset that, I had to increase the tax on soda, I had to increase the tax on digital downloads, I had to get an internet tax, get a tire tax, get a new tire tax, get the gas tax. All of these things are designed to give the government the same amount of money or much more money than they have right now. And that is Governor Asa Hutchinson's style of governing. Those are his ideas. Those are what establishment Republicans want. That's not what the platform Republicans want. It's what the establishment Republicans want, who are in charge of the leadership of the state of Arkansas. And I'm telling you right now, we have the news that the special session has been called, or it's about to be called. A 3-day special session next week. J.R. Davis says that the special session will be called either today sometime or as late as Friday. So we're waiting on the actual call. But KATV reports that the state legislature will meet May 1st to officially adjourn. And I just want to say this. This is the news for me. They're going to meet May 1st to adjourn its regular biennial session. And then they're going to enter into a 3-day special session. But real tax reform won't be on the special session agenda. And they're meeting May 1st to end their biennial session without actually doing real tax reform when the state of Arkansas is looking at having to add 6.9% of your state income taxes to all of a sudden become part of your taxable income when the federal government comes knocking. Folks, this is the problem. We sent Republicans, we voted for Republicans to go down to Little Rock and decide the most important thing that we talk about all the time, and that is the process of how the government is going to take money from us and support the things that we want it to support. Many of us don't want it to support as much as it does, but you get the point. And on day 2 or 3 of the Arkansas General Assembly, they meet once every 2 years to actually get to discuss policy ideas. Governor Hutchinson says, "Nope, follow me. We're going to have a task force, and we'll decide and vote in January of 2019. We won't have real tax reform, if you even believe that they'll come up with those ideas, until 2019. In the meantime, Donald Trump is probably going to pass his tax reform package this year, and it will apply to this tax year, I hope. And thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, leadership. Thanks a lot, establishment Republicans. You just go along with them. You go along with the leadership, and it actually does end up hurting folks who could be paying less taxes if you would have just been willing to lead. So, anyway, let's see. The Washington Post article. Does it go on? Yeah. Here it is. Let's get to businesses. For businesses, Trump's proposal would lower the corporate tax rate from 35% to 15%. It would also allow smaller businesses structured in such a way that they are affected by the individual tax rate to also use the 15% threshold. There are millions of these businesses known as S corporations, and they are often small family-owned firms. Now think about that for a second. Folks, that right there is a huge idea that could leave a ton of money in small business coffers that could go directly to reinvesting in their businesses, creating new jobs, expanding. That may be the best idea that I've heard out of this. I mean, and here we have the Trump administration, the people behind this policy. They're actually proposing a policy that prioritizes the backbone of America. Now, I wish Arkansas officials had proposed policies that would prioritize the tax burden, that would at least admit that we're overtaxed. And I mean, if you look at Texarkana, for example, it's the only part of the state that admits that Arkansas is taxed too much, because if it wasn't for the state tax exemptions that Texarkana has, nobody would live on the Arkansas side of Texarkana. They'd all live on the Texas side. I mean, that it's a rebuke. The tax breaks that Texarkana, Arkansas has is a rebuke to the rest of to the entire tax policy that we have going on here, and they just refuse to look at real tax reform. It's encouraging to me, and I don't know how it's going to shake out. I don't know how it's going to end up, but it is encouraging to me that the White House appears to be putting forth ideas that actually value the small businesses that Barack Obama demonized for so long, saying that you didn't build your business, and then he equated millionaires and billionaires, which to me was one of the most ridiculous things, and it was playing on the lack of knowledge of I think the average American when you just lump millionaires and billionaires together. I mean, there's a lot of small business owners that have businesses and assets that are, $1 million+ that they use to keep their company afloat, that they pay, they hire a lot of people, create good paying jobs. To lump a millionaire small business owner in with a billionaire is ludicrous to me, because a billionaire is, $1 billion is $27,000 a day spent for 100 years with money still left over. That is nowhere near what a millionaire is. You know what I mean? Like, it's just crazy to me. And yet he did it. Millionaires and billionaires pay their fair share. Well, those millionaires he's talking about are small business owners, and they provide a lot of jobs. Hey, folks, don't wait till it's too late. I want to encourage you to be proactive. Don't get hacked by ransomware. Speaking of business owners, don't get hacked by ransomware. And that's an easy thing for me to say. Hey, just don't do it. Well, you don't have any control over that. You could get hacked by ransomware tomorrow, and you're going to be looking at paying $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 to get your data, to purchase your data back, to ransom your data back. That's why I want you to protect your business by calling iTex. iTex, they are the techs to trust. Because protecting your business means protecting your data. You should ask yourself the question, is your business really prepared to handle the growing threat of things like cyber criminals or ransomware? At iTex, they're committed to deploying the best security solutions to protect your business and your bottom line. Security threats are constantly evolving, and that means your needs are constantly evolving in this area, and iTex has the solutions. Be proactive now and equip your business with the best cybersecurity available with iTex. Call them today for a free consultation. 870-336-9778. That's 870-336-9778, or visit them on the web, itexusa.com. Back in a moment.
Don't wait until it's too late to recover what belongs to you. At Triple R Recovery, service is our specialty. We offer recovery of ATVs, boats, vehicles, and personal possessions. If you are in need of our services and want back what is rightfully yours, give us a call for 24/7 assistance at 1-866-593-7457. That's 1-866-593-7457. Or email us at triplrrecovery@gmail.com.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way,
Contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas. Whether you're looking for a small desktop copier and printer, thinking about adding color to your documents, or considering a document management solution, Total Document Solutions is there to help. In business for decades, Total Document Solutions is an independently owned company that specializes in the ability to provide a high level of service in Northwest Arkansas, the Arkansas River Valley, Southwest Missouri, and Southeast Kansas as an exclusive Platinum Authorized Sales Agent for the Xerox Corporation. At Total Document Solutions, they offer customers technology services to improve business results. Their dedicated sales team has the unmatched industry knowledge, professionalism, and expertise needed to address the unique challenges of your business. Total Document Solutions is independent, local, and well-connected to serve your office products and document needs. Call them today at 479-575-0770. That's 479-575-0770 for your Total Document Solutions.
Welcome to Common Sense and Liberty. I'm Donnie Copeland. At a press conference for the Campus Carry Bill, Governor Hutchinson called the Second Amendment a privilege that needs to be earned. Now, we know that the Second Amendment is a right that is endowed by our Creator. Maybe the governor has his privileges and his rights mixed up. Health care is a privilege. The Second Amendment is a right. For Common Sense and Liberty, I'm Donnie Copeland.
Watch Paul live at paulharrell.com. It's free and available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because the Liberty Machine never sleeps.
All right, speaking of this tax policy, over at Breitbart, this is a fantastic editorial by Senator Rand Paul. He says, real men as well as pull-no-punches women. You got to put that in there nowadays. Cut taxes, he says. The lesser mortals that tend to inhabit Washington wring their hands and get all weak in the knees when it comes to cutting taxes. Rumors are President Trump will propose a real tax cut. I certainly hope so. Once upon a time, most Republicans believed in tax cuts. Somewhere along the way, inside the Beltway especially, Republicans forgot about the benefits of cutting taxes. Republicans became more concerned with government keeping its revenue than letting the people keep their money. Too many Republicans have become timid about tax cuts, often spouting the milquetoast line of revenue-neutral tax cuts. Quote, revenue-neutral tax cuts. Let me translate that, Rand Paul writes. Little bit of Washington speak. Revenue-neutral tax cuts aren't really tax cuts. It's more like tax shifting. Some will pay more, some will pay less, and the net effect will be that the government will collect the same amount of taxes. If revenue-neutral tax shifting is what Republicans stand for, maybe it's time we reevaluated what we really stand for. What will revenue-neutral tax cuts mean to your business? Well, that may depend on how expensive your lobbyist is. Which side of the revenue-neutral ledger you wind up on may depend on how well the skids are greased. Hardly a pleasant scenario to anticipate. By the way, this article goes out to all of you pro-task force Republicans out there. And look, there are some platform Republicans that have high hopes for the task force. And look, I respect you guys, and I hope you're able to not get tax shifting and revenue-neutral tax cuts, but get some real tax cuts. Actually shrink the size of government. But every one of you Arkansas Republicans need to read this article by Rand Paul, because it's exactly right. We used to stand for tax cuts, and now we just are about tax shifting and trying to protect the government's precious revenue. Let me tell you something. It's not their money. It's our money that they take from us. And we've been electing people to go down there to take less of it, not to play a shell game and then write campaign mailers trying to tell us you're so great because you've cut our taxes and did what you said you were going to do when the government has the same amount of money, if not more revenue coming in.
Majority. I worked very hard to establish good relationships with people across the aisle because I've never believed that any one party or group has a monopoly on good ideas. And, even when, again, we were working with 54 Democrats that first term, you probably weren't ever going to get all 54, right? So you're probably going to still need some Republican votes. And that was something I've just continued to try to do because I honestly am less interested about whether an idea is thought of as a Republican or Democratic idea as I am just whether or not I think it's a good idea. And I think the state is probably better served when we consider multiple viewpoints. Obviously, when the people put in one party in power to the extent that they have the Republican Party right now, I think those ideas should win the day more often than not. But I don't think that means that other ideas should be discarded without at least some conversation. So just for me, it was all about reaching out and finding, again, issues that aren't partisan. I mean, I don't think a single bill that I passed could be considered a partisan bill. I did file some legislation that could be seen that way, but I either ended up not running it or it died a pretty quick death.
I've had some Democrats down there, they tell me confidentially that from their standpoint, they don't feel like Republicans are necessarily governing like the majority party down there. And I didn't know if you agree with that. And that was in the context of how the whole committee process shook out when you guys ended up with 11, then 10 Democrats on one of the most powerful committees that you're on, the House Revenue and Tax Committee.
I do think there are some divisions in the Republican caucuses, but I think that's just natural. There were divisions when the Democrats had such strong majorities. It's tough to get that many people together and have everybody agree on the same thing. And I don't think everybody should agree, right? If all 135 legislators down there think the same way, then 134 of them aren't necessary. It was a little surprising, honestly, that we were able to at least temporarily pull off that majority on House Revenue and Tax. But obviously, the gambit ultimately failed because we lost a member, ended up just with a tie on that committee, and I think we probably forced the Speaker's hand in changing the rules for future sessions. So I'm really not sure it was worth it. But it was, when you're in the minority, you are looking for whatever point of leverage you can gain, right? And that seemed to be one that made the most sense. And honestly, I could talk for a long time about how all that went down, but just to be really brief about it, our plan within the first couple of votes completely fell apart. The only way we were able to establish, again, just a temporary majority on that committee was there was a
He puts the Paul in politics. The Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
I want to pick back. I'm going to read the whole thing. This goes out to just all the Republicans everywhere, but specifically the ones here in the state. And it's Kentucky Senator Rand Paul that has an amazing op-ed, I think, about revenue-neutral tax cuts and how they're not really tax cuts. Okay? If revenue-neutral tax shifting is what Republicans stand for, maybe it's time we reevaluated what we stand for. What will revenue-neutral tax cuts mean for your business? Well, that may depend on how expensive your lobbyist is, which side of the revenue-neutral ledger you wind up on, may depend on how well the skids are greased. Hardly a pleasant scenario to anticipate. Rand Paul, I believe as John F. Kennedy and Ronald Reagan did, that the best way to stimulate our economy, promote job growth, and give our ailing middle class a raise is to cut taxes for all. I know Donald Trump believes this, too, because he said it so often during the campaign, and as a job creator himself, he knows that lower taxes and less regulation are the keys to more jobs. This week, we are expected to hear the beginnings of the Trump tax reform plan. I, for one, urge the president to stick to his guns and not to preemptively surrender to the establishment in Congress and to offer real, meaningful cuts to individuals and businesses across all income levels. It is likely the single most important thing he will do in his first year in office to determine our economic growth over the next several years. Our economy has grown to an anemic 2% average over the last 15 years. Historically, it's been near double that. We have lost more than $3 trillion in GDP to this anemic growth, according to the economist Steve Moore. We cannot allow this to continue, so I urge President to go big and bold, but also go simple. As he has likely already seen, people often try to make things too complicated or clever up here in Congress. Obamacare repeal is a great example. So learning from that lesson, let's make this simple. We don't need hundreds of special interests grabbing for goodies. We won't need 2,000-page bills. We need a big, bold tax cut. My suggestions from among the ideas that I've championed and Donald Trump ran on are simple. First, cut the corporate tax rate. Ours is now the highest in the world at 35%. We should immediately cut it to 15% or less, putting us in line with other countries. Money and business go where they're welcome, and right now, that's not the United States. We can change that. We can do it easily while creating millions of new jobs. At that low rate, we can also eliminate deductions and loopholes and make the tax simple and fair. Talks about American regulatory and tax treatment of business has in recent years led to major corporations moving overseas or leaving their overseas profits offshore. Currently, they are double taxed with a 35% penalty for bringing this money home. I authored a bipartisan bill last year to allow repatriation of that capital at 6.5%, bringing home as much as $2 trillion in capital, job growth, and increased revenue. Now, Trump is proposing this, by the way. This is Rand Paul writing this op-ed. He is proposing doing this, having a grace period and allowing this money to come back in without being taxed. Finally, we must make sure every income level receives a cut, and that means small business organized under various parts of the tax code, they get the benefit of the corporate tax cut, meaning S corporations, that's what Trump is proposing here as well. I'm hoping the president has learned three things from his Obamacare repeal experience. First, work with the true fiscal conservatives in Congress to come up with a great tax plan. Second, keep it simple. Make sure everyone in America will both know and see the benefits. Finally, remember who elected you and heed this advice. No one ever knocked doors or made phone calls for revenue-neutral tax reform. If you want to drain the swamp, you have to take away money from Washington and send it back to the people. I stand ready to cut taxes for every American and get our economy moving again. Senator Rand Paul. Now, to Arkansas Republicans. No one voted for you, knocked doors, or made phone calls so you would go down there and listen to Asa and pursue, in this case, no real tax reform at all, but number two, revenue-neutral tax reform. And get used to hearing me say that because the task force is going to form and their recommendations are not due until August of 2018, and then 2019 would be the next session where they actually get this done. In the meantime, part of Donald Trump's tax reform package means that we no longer get to take the deduction, the 6.9% income tax we pay the state of Arkansas, off of our federal taxes, which means instead of calling special sessions on health care to try to make sure you can make the hospitals and everybody else happy, why don't you call a special session, or maybe they keep the session going when they meet on Monday and say, we're not going to do the task force. We need to address these real problems with our tax code now. We need to address them now, not in 2019. We need to address them in April of 2017, because if Donald Trump's tax plan passes, we have now increased the tax burden on Arkansans who are paying that 6.9%. And it doesn't take a lot to pay the 6.9%. You make $35,000, you're paying the 6.9%. Folks, this is not complicated. We sent Republicans down there to actually reform things and do things differently than the Democrats did them for 140 years. And we get down there and we're told by these Republican progressives who are scared to do anything that would drain the swamp in Little Rock by cutting off their revenue. Instead, they're trying to create new ways to suck up revenue and support their big crony schemes. Whether it's the gas tax increase, the tire taxes, the internet taxes, it's ridiculous. It's not why we knocked doors for them. It's not why you made phone calls for them. It's not why you voted for them. So instead of ending session and sine dying on Monday, there should be an effort to push back down in Little Rock and say, no, we don't want to end this. We want to address tax reform because it's a big deal. It's a big deal. And I would say, well, why isn't Asa calling a special session on that? I don't really want Asa to call a special session, quite frankly, because all he does with his special sessions is he makes the bills and backroom deals, and then he calls everybody down there to basically it's a formality. If we're going to allow the governor to have this much influence and this much power, getting Republicans to go against the platform of the party of Arkansas, we should just be honest about it. We should dissolve the General Assembly and just give all the power to him. At least he'll be responsible for it when it all doesn't work out right. At least we'll know who to blame. You know, that's about the only good thing that happens in parliamentary systems like over in London, which is really strange. The only good thing about their system is that one party wins and they take control of the entire government. They don't have divided government. So you know who to vote out of office when things aren't going right. That's about the only good thing the people have a pretty simple way of assigning blame. And the only reason I know about this is because I was helping some students with their We the People competition that just actually took place about a week ago in Washington, D.C. A local Arkansas school went there, and I was helping, and they got some of those questions were great. Some of those questions had a lot of pretext behind them, and you could tell a liberal had written them. Some of them you could tell didn't like American government, the Constitution, and everything else, and they actually liked the parliamentary systems better. But it was a good exercise for folks to defend why Americanism, the Constitution, is better. A healthy skepticism of power is better than just assuming that once you become a politician and you're in office that you somehow grow wings and become infallible. I think we know that's not the case with John Woods, Mike and Neil, Jake Files. Are we not ready to put him in that same category yet? My bad. Phone number is 870-275-9799. All right. Follow me on Twitter, by the way, at Paul Harrell 1776. That's at Paul Harrell 1776. I just got this article. I saw this tweeted by Mr. Josh Waters, tweeted it out. It's pretty good. What states are the freest? This map shows Americans where to go if they crave liberty. It's from the John Locke Foundation. They just published its first, and actually this is not new. I just saw this tweet. This is actually a couple years old. But it certainly still shows where we are, where we want to go, which is not here. But the John Locke Foundation, 2 years ago, they published a Freedom Index report that compares and ranks the relative freedom of all 50 states. They're a North Carolina-based think tank. Okay, the most significant consideration was fiscal policy, which measures taxes and budgetary measures. This aspect generated 50% of each state's score, with 20% given each to education and regulatory policies, and the final 10% to healthcare policy. Here's the graphic of the country. So if you take those results, Arkansas comes in at 40th. So if you want to, so out of all the states, if you crave liberty, where to go? Arkansas is number 40. Oklahoma is 8. Louisiana is 6. Texas is 12, which is surprisingly high. Number one. Florida is number 1, Joe. 28 Missouri, 33 Tennessee, 38 Mississippi. Arkansas comes in at 40. The overall results from the report show the freest state is Florida, followed by Arizona, Indiana, South Dakota, and Georgia. The least free state is New York, followed by New Jersey, California, West Virginia, and Kentucky. Don't you know, establishment Republicans, you know, the non-platform Republicans that we have running this state, don't you know they hate stories like this. They hate graphics like this that show what a terrible job they've done with the opportunity that they've had. Unbelievable. These are the states ranking based solely on fiscal policy. On fiscal policy, we come in at 36. I'm sure that has to do with our outrageous 6.5% sales tax, average about 10% when you combine local and county taxes. Fiscal policy, tax policy, that's got to hurt our giant income tax that Tennessee doesn't have and Texas does that. See, Texas comes in number 4 in that one. Florida number 5. Who's number 1 for fiscal policy? South Dakota. Yeah, Arkansas's 36 though. We're not even in the run. It's like we're not even in the conversation. We're like the Buffalo Bills. You know. It's like, oh, okay, whatever. Let's see. These are the educational freedom rankings. 32. Arkansas's 32. Florida's number 1. Louisiana's 5. Oklahoma is 10. We do beat Tennessee in that one. Tennessee's at 48 when it comes to educational freedom rankings. John Locke Foundation. Here are the states based on regulatory freedom. We come in with a whopping 35. Great. 35. Right in the middle of the pack. Oklahoma's 4, Texas 18. Tennessee is 23. And lastly, here are the rankings for healthcare freedom. We're at 33. Texas 19, Louisiana 12, Mississippi 16. Let's see, Oklahoma 17. Anyway, freedom in the 50 states. There you go. But overall, I mean, when you combine it all, I mean, we're right there, 36. I mean, it's just sad to me. It's just sad to me. I don't know about you. All right. The death penalty. A lot of people talking about this. So we got one more on Thursday. One more execution on Thursday. And his name's Kenneth Williams. And I interviewed his... I interviewed the widow of the man Kenneth Williams murdered a couple of days ago. Now, 5 o'clock, we're gonna replay some of this interview for you because the execution's tomorrow, and I just, again, there's so little. Now, NBC News, to their credit, they did a decent job on the report they did on Jeannie Boren, the widow of Cecil Boren. They did a decent job. They still presented the anti-death penalty folks as well. But so little of the media has been focused on the crimes that were committed that got these men to the point that they're at. And so that's why I want to let you listen to it again. There was an article about some potential legal stuff that was going on. Hang on a second. Yeah, here it is. This morning the report came out that lawyers are trying to save Kenneth Williams from execution. Federal public defenders in Pennsylvania, of all places. Pennsylvania now trying to stop, our federal public defenders trying to stop the execution of Kenneth Williams, who shot Cecil Boren 7 times, murdered him when he escaped from prison. Federal public defenders in Pennsylvania requested a stay of execution Tuesday for death row prisoner Kenneth Dwayne Williams, who is scheduled to die by lethal injection Thursday at the Cummins prison in Grady. In one motion for the stay, attorneys cited pervasive juror misconduct in Williams' capital murder trial in 2000 and requested a hearing on the matter with testimony from jurors. A second motion for a stay notes that Williams never received a hearing to determine whether he is intellectually disabled. It says he meets the 3 prongs used to legally determine intellectual disability and notes that anyone meeting that definition is ineligible for the death penalty. You can see these Pennsylvania public defenders. They're defenders of the public, just so you know, these Pennsylvania attorneys defending the public against a man who broke out of prison and murdered someone 17 years ago. These separate motions for a stay were filed alongside a request to reopen Williams' 2007 federal habeas petition, which he filed after the Arkansas Supreme Court upheld his convictions that year. Okay. So let's get to the juror misconduct, because I was wondering, what are they saying? They're saying that in his trial in 2000 that there was some juror misconduct, these attorneys are now trying to save this guy from being executed. The attorneys say their recent appointment marks the first time sufficient funds have been available to investigate jury misconduct at Williams' trial, and that they have conducted such an investigation very recently which found significant evidence of jury misconduct, bias, and exposure to improper evidence. According to the Philadelphia attorneys, one who are meddling in Arkansas issues, one juror who worked at the prison told other jurors during penalty phase deliberations of Williams' trial about her experience working in the prison and about the differences in housing for life and death sentenced prisoners. It said, oh, that's huge juror misconduct there. It says another juror, quote, led the jury in prayer using a Bible that had been brought into the jury room. Oh, my goodness. These Pennsylvania attorneys are trying to save this guy who murdered Cecil Boren. And one of the things that they're saying is the jury had a Bible in the room, and the jury prayed while they were deliberating the fate of a man's life.
What a thought from a very religious state.
What a crazy notion. What a crazy notion to think, you know what, maybe we need God's help here because we've got a man's life in our hands, so maybe we want to pray. That's a crazy idea. Jurors can make that decision for themselves. Anyway, man, I don't know about you, but that actually gives me more confidence in the jury. Am I the only one? We have to take a break. 870-275-9799. Back in a minute.
You've probably thought about getting your real estate license, but you keep putting it off. Don't put it off any longer. The Northeast Arkansas Real Estate School makes learning the business easy with enthusiastic, interactive, real-world situations, and you can do it all with only 6 days of class. Go to neaprofessionalschools.com and register for the next class. Financing is available. They'll travel anywhere in Arkansas to teach you everything you need to know to become a licensed real estate agent. Or you can take the class online at your own pace. That's neaprofessionalschools.com. 870-336-4155. Mention the Paul Harrell program and get 10% off. Don't put it off any longer. neaprofessionalschools.com. Do you need to advertise your business product or service, but not sure what the best choice is? Folks, allow me to introduce you to Talk Radio. You're listening to it right now. Talk radio is one of the most unique mediums in all of advertising because it actually works. It gets the information you want to the people you want to get it to. And by the way, those people are educated, well-informed decision makers of their household, and most of them have disposable income. If this is a target audience for your business, then you have to consider advertising on my show, The Paul Harrell Program. We have options for most any budget and can provide you with exciting opportunities to grow your business. We can put your message across the state, or we can help you locally. Call 870-275-9755 if you have any questions. That's 870-275-9755, or visit my website, paulharrell.com, and click on Advertise.
This is Mother Government. I come to the people of Arkansas with an important announcement. In disloyal circles, some are questioning the scope and size of government and telling the people government programs should not waste the labors of the people under the guise of taking care of them. This is a thought I must correct. People of Arkansas, you should not believe everything you hear unless it comes from a government source. Let me, Mother Government, set the record straight. You know you can trust me. After all, would your own mother lie to you? You should know the brand new, terrific program known as Arkansas Works has nothing to do with the old, bad program known as the Obamacare private option. Arkansas Works is good. People who say otherwise are bad and are seeking to undermine my collective vision for progress. If these groups continue in their criticism, then you should question their party loyalty. Tell them to quit focusing on this single issue. And then remind them Mother Government says the future of Arkansas depends on this single issue. In my next address, I will discuss the need to prepare your fellow citizens for the next round of revenue gathering that will be needed to continue funding my motherly goals. This message was brought to you by our partner, Aristocrats, serving Arkansas. Thank you for listening, and remember, from cradle to grave.
PHP Parody.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was checking the weather. I was walking next door to another studio, just getting somebody's weather advice. The software they've got over there is pretty incredible how they can track the weather there. The studios that I'm at in Jonesboro, we're kind of getting some bad weather. I think it's worse south of us. And this is bad. I mean, the whole state's been getting this all day. So I guess it was over in the northwest part of the state, probably, 3 a.m. this morning. It's just been such a slow-moving storm. Mountain Home right now, of course, this is on delay if Mountain Home's hearing it, but right now at about 5 o'clock, it's kind of really coming down in Mountain Home, from what I can tell. As well here in Jonesboro, down at Brinkley, I think they've got a tornado warning. That's about as severe as it is right now, but just really strong storms coming down out there. Yeah, all right, so when we come back, I want to play this interview again with me interviewing Jeannie Boren, the widow of Cecil Boren, who was murdered by Kenneth Williams. And I also want to find out, what are the status of these Pennsylvania lawyers? They're trying to say that the jury that convicted him used a Bible. They're trying to say that was wrong. That was juror misconduct, that they used a Bible and prayed when they were deciding the fate of Kenneth Williams. Pretty ridiculous stuff, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Text me, 870-275-9799. Back in a moment.
Josh, Glenn, Sean, and Paul. This is Jonesboro's 1013 FM News Talk, KBTM.
Republican lawmaker in the 4th District Caucus who was steering freshman Republicans away from that committee. I guess not realizing what we were trying to do, or thinking it wouldn't necessarily matter. And that is, I mean, I guess in his defense, not to blame this poor soul, but that is one of the committees where the chair does have a little bit more say on what legislation actually going to run.
Yeah.
So, you know, to really have any kind of leverage in that committee, we probably should have had 14 or 15 members, and that was never going to be possible. One
of the key points of the session, the key debates, was over Senate Bill 140, the Senator Jake Files legislation to, tax the internet, tax out-of-state sellers, try to figure out a way to expand our authority to where we can make them when they don't have a nexus in our state. Talk a little bit about the Democrats' role there. You guys were able to block that really up until the end, and specifically if you can address the amendment on SB 140, because I was in the room and I thought you guys were going to get it passed. There were 10 votes, and needed 11, and then it got to you, and you didn't vote on that, and it made, I think, one of your colleagues kind of mad because she got up and left right after that. So tell us that whole process, because about why you didn't want to support that amendment.
I am not wild about hostile amendments. I think it's got to be a very special circumstance for you to try to do that to a sponsor. So I was never really supportive, but again, they are my caucus, and we did gain a majority on that committee for a reason. So early on, I did vote with them, at least in not getting the bill out of committee and keeping it bottled up in committee, but I was never really on board for the amendment. But yeah, that was a risk I took, angering some caucus members. I know Senator Files was appreciative. But my point, or my feeling was, that final vote was one of the very last days of session. It was only like 2 days after that. And my point to my colleagues was, look, you fought, you tried. These things that you're trying to, through the amendment, divert money to, unless the bill passes, the money's not going to be there to do those things, right? So let's at least get this to the House floor and see what our other colleagues have to say. And ultimately the bill lost by, I think, 7, 8, maybe 9 votes.
Yeah, and there's talk of it maybe coming up in the special session again. Have you heard anything about that? You think it's possible?
I certainly think it's possible. I mean, the state, I think, could use the revenue. Obviously, Walmart is important in the state, and I know they would like to see the bill passed, but so would a lot of cities who are hurting, and a lot of small businesses. And I think anytime that you get independent, small mom-and-pop businesses, on Main Street, pushing for the same thing that Walmart's pushing for, it's at least worth talking about, because those aren't
or at least
generally
or at least pointing out the contradiction that when is Walmart ever for mom-and-pop stores? So something certainly worth talking
something
about.
Might be.
Have you guys gotten the call? Have you guys gotten the call for the special session yet?
Unless it's come this afternoon, I don't think so. I was out of state over the weekend for a conference.
Okay.
I do think it made the news last week that the governor was planning on calling it, but I don't think I've received the official call.
You can't get real quick. I know we're running out of time. I got a couple more questions, but the quest for revenue. There's a lot of bills that increase in tire taxes, creation of new tire tax, of course the internet sales tax, the gasoline sales tax. These were just quests for more revenue, and when people tried to allocate it and specifically put it in a certain spot, that was met with resistance from the leadership. So, is there a budget problem? Do we need this money from somewhere else? What are your thoughts on that whole quest for revenue?
I will say that privately, I have had Republican colleagues who have said they think we might have gone not necessarily too far with tax cuts in the last couple of sessions, but we might have gotten a little ahead of ourselves. Some of the economic forecasts that we counted on when we passed that last round might have been a little too optimistic. We maybe should have proceeded a little more slowly. So there are some concerns about where we stand right now. I don't think it necessarily means we're in trouble, but there are some people who are less inclined, or at least a little more concerned about some significant tax cuts. Obviously, we did pass several tax relief bills. Again, I managed to get one passed. But I do think there's some concern about moving too quickly.
The maintenance of a free society is a very difficult and complicated thing, and it requires a self-denying ordinance of the most extreme kind. It requires a willingness to put up with temporary evils on the basis of the subtle and sophisticated understanding that if you step in to do something about them, you not only may make them worse, but you will spread your tentacles and get bad results elsewhere.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. We lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
You're listening to the Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
Hey, folks, welcome back to the program. It's hour number 2. Thank you so much for being with us. My name is Paul. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine. We're glad that you're with us. Hey, what a welcome back to the program. We have State Representative Nelda Speaks is on the line. Nelda, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Paul, and it's a wonderful thing to get to be on your program.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that. We've been doing these interviews with your colleagues, and we've been calling it the impression of the session. And so they basically, it's just you giving what you thought of the session, and it can start by you just taking as long or being as brief as you want. Overall, generally, what was your impression of the session?
Well, it's never as conservative as I'd like for it to be, Paul. But overall, I think that it was a pretty good session. Sometimes you feel like about all you get done is just holding off maybe tax increases and some of that, and then we did get to do that. Of course, there were things that did get slipped through and happened. You win some and you lose some. But I was thankful that the gas tax hike, it's $200 million per year, that we've got that stopped. The internet sales tax for the people, we were able to stop that one. I'm not sure whether that's going to be brought back up in this special session. You hear different things, but I have not been told positive, so I don't know. Some of the good legislation that we did get done is, the tort reform. I told the Baxter County Republican Committee last night, we've got the tort reform passed, but now we're going to have, it's up to all of us to get it passed in November or in 2018. I told them, I said, I'd done my part. It's up to y'all now. But it's going to take all hands on deck to get that thing done because there's going to be a lot of money pour into our state, I believe. One of the things I know that they have formed a tax task force, and to look and identify more ways to make Arkansas's tax structure more competitive. And if we're ever going to get some of the bigger companies coming into Arkansas, we're going to have to do that. I hope they really go through that and get a good job done on that. But that's basically, where we were. The one thing that we passed this year that I thought was wonderful, when you see the students college students, they do not even know who their who their lieutenant governor is, or who the president of the United States, or maybe the our vice president. But they will have to take a test now, the naturalization test that the Immigrants Service uses to get their diploma. They only have to pass 60 out of 100, but at least this is going to get something down in them, a little bit about our country and our government and how it works.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's I appreciate you giving us that, that impression of the session. And I forgot to mention at the beginning of the interview, you're from District 100. Tell us where District 100 is.
This is in the upper part of Baxter County, all the way across. It pretty basically runs from Mountain Home up to the upper top portion, and then I come all the way across through Lakeview, and it takes in all of Mountain Home. I do not go into Cotter or Gassville. It just kind of skirts around that. But all of Mountain Home. So that takes in about the 30,000 that is mine. We have, I think there's 4 representatives that do come into Baxter County.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly we're happy. The Paul Harrell program is happy to be broadcasting now on Mountain Talk 97. So hopefully, and this is a good medium for you to be able to talk to your constituents. And so we're really glad to have you. You mentioned in your remarks, never as conservative as I'd like to be because we're holding off tax increases. Talk a little bit about, if you don't mind, you guys had 76 out in the House, 76 Republicans. And yet, to me, it's abundantly clear after this session. I don't see how anyone could argue with it. If you're having to hold off tax increases being brought by your fellow Republicans, and you wonder if they've read the Republican platform.
I do not believe they have any idea what that is in that platform. And what surprises me when you get down there, I mean, we've got the governor, all of the constitutional office holders, and 76 Republicans, but yet we're spending, but we're not ever cutting back, and we look at everything that was thrown at us this time of tax increases to the people, and that is the big thing I thought that Republicans stood for, was less government, less taxes. We were supposed to be conservative people, and that's what I think that they elect us to do. The majority of the people in Arkansas, I do believe the philosophy of the Republican Party, but yet we don't heed to it.
What do you think it would take? I mean, what do you think it's going to take to actually to heed to it? Because, see, at some point, that's what everybody's voting for. I don't think I talked about this last hour, that people are knocking doors and making phone calls for Republicans so that they can find a way to get more money out of us,
I don't know. The first session, I went down there. I was county treasurer for 16 years here in Baxter County, and I seen that even on the court did not operate the way I thought the conservative Republicans would operate. And when I got down there, and all of us, there was such a majority that was elected that time, that freshmen that came in, and every one of us ran against the private option and got down there, and we got together, and I had enough, was crazy enough to think that we would overturn the thing, but it did not happen. And I couldn't believe the gas tax, asking the voters for that much. I would never have thought a Republican would have brought forth that. Also, the internet sales, those are Republicans that's bringing those up, and it's been a shock to me. But maybe they're not where they're from. If I'd done something like that, Baxter County is very, very conservative, and I think they would find someone to run against me, and should.
Yeah. Well, a lot of those tax increases were brought by State Representative Dan Douglas of Bentonville. So we'll see. Maybe he will draw a primary opponent. And we'll start to hear about that, I'm sure. Maybe this summer or this fall, people who start announcing for primaries and stuff like that. And you would think if you have such a blatant deviation from what you run on, lower taxes and less government. It's really interesting. How do you stay positive, Nelda? We're talking with State Representative Nelda Speaks. I mean, every time I saw you while you were down there, and I've said this before, you always have a smile on your face. You're very conservative in your voting record, and yet you're just always happy. How does that work out for you?
Well, I made up my mind. I've seen people come to Little Rock, and they leave there just so frustrated and mad and that. And I count it a blessing to just even get to go down there and represent the people. And so I'm not going to be just beat down and that. I'm one vote, and if I'll go down there and I come back to Baxter County and people say, you've done a wonderful job, and I know I'm not going to please everybody. I mean, that's a given. But I want the majority of the people, and when I've done that, I'm happy, and I'm not going to let it just eat my lunch. I'll do my very best and let the chips fall where they are. I mean, that's about all we can do. And so I'm an upbeat person. I believe in being positive, hoping things will work out better, and that we will become more conservative, and that's just my lifestyle.
Yeah, well, and at this point, I'm trying to coin the phrase, Nelda, platform Republicans, because, if you were to ask some of these Republicans that have been supporting these tax increases, if you were to ask them if they're conservative, they would say, oh, yeah, I'm real conservative. I mean, it just depends on how you define it. And so I feel like if we just start saying, hey, I'm a platform Republican, we can get the word out of what that means. That means I actually believe in what I run on.
I think that's a good idea. I really do. I think, and one of the things I think, Paul, that some Republicans that has been, we've seen a big shift in people coming over on to the Republican side, and that's great because I want us to be open and have people coming into our party. But sometimes I think that they may not be physical conservative people like we think Republicans should be, and what I think our platform is. But the issues on abortions and same-sex marriage and that kind of stuff, they fall in line with the Republican Party on those things. But maybe we can train them on this other.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, and that just, at some point, I feel like the leadership is a problem. We got to have people willing, to lead us to smaller government, and that means, the lobbyists aren't going to be happy, the bureaucracies aren't going to be happy, but hey, it's the people that matter, and it's the people that are voting for a government they want to live under, and we just got to make sure we get folks down there to reflect that. And Nelda Speaks, I know that you're one of those people, so I really appreciate you coming on, giving us your impression of the session, and I'm proud of how happy you are, or the attitude that you do have, because it certainly encouraged me while I was down there, and I know it encourages your colleagues, both on the left and the right, quite frankly.
Well, good. It's my desire to get along with all of them. We don't vote alike, but they have to represent their people, and I do too, back home. And so I want to leave there as their friend and colleague, that they will remember you well.
All right, State Representative Nelda Speaks, we appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, and anytime, looking forward to you being in Mountain Home.
Absolutely. I think I'm scheduled to be there on Pioneer Day. I think that's May the 20th.
I think so.
Yeah, so I'll be there setting up right next to the Mountain Talk 97 booth they'll have there, and really excited about that. So that'll be a lot of fun. So
great. That'll be a good place. Okay, thank you,
all right.
Paul.
Thank you. Folks, we got to go to break. The Liberty Machine rolls on next.
Don't wait until it's too late to recover what belongs to you. At R Recovery, service is our specialty. We offer recovery of ATVs, boats, vehicles, and personal possessions. If you are in need of our services and want back what is rightfully yours, give us a call for 24/7 assistance at 1-866-593-7457. That's 1-866-593-7457. Or email us at rrecovery@gmail.com.
Protecting your business means protecting your data. But is your business really prepared to handle the growing threat of things like cybercriminals and ransomware? At iTex, they're committed to deploying the best security solutions to protect your business and your bottom line. Security threats are constantly evolving. So are security needs. Be proactive now and equip your business with the best cybersecurity available with iTex. Call them today for a free consultation at 870-336-9778. That's 870-336-9778 or itexusa.com.
This is Dan Sullivan with the Liberty Reminder. History has taught us over and over again that freedom is not free. When push comes to shove, the ultimate protectors of freedom and liberty are the men and women in our armed forces. Throughout our history, they have answered the call bravely and sacrificially.
Paid for by Sullivan for Arkansas. Arkansas small businesses are tired of taxes that are too high and regulations that work as obstacles to small business success. If you own a small business, it's time to take action. Now, I'm not talking about the local chambers of commerce. I'm talking about an organization that's actually run by small business owners and are fighting for small businesses right here in the state of Arkansas. They're called Conduit for Action, and they're on your side. Conduit for Action is here not to get something from the government, but to be left alone by the government. Think of them as your personal advocate for limited government at the Capitol in Little Rock. If you're tired of all the politicians talking with no results and ready for action, start outsourcing your government affair needs with Conduit for Action. Go now to conduitforaction.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforaction.org and stand up for small business in Arkansas. Whether you're looking for a small desktop copier and printer, thinking about adding color to your documents, or considering a document management solution, Total Document Solutions is there to help. In business for decades, Total Document Solutions is an independently owned company that specializes in the ability to provide a high level of service in Northwest Arkansas the Arkansas River Valley, Southwest Missouri, and Southeast Kansas as an exclusive Platinum Authorized Sales Agent for the Xerox Corporation. At Total Document Solutions, they offer customers technology services to improve business results. Their dedicated sales team has the unmatched industry knowledge, professionalism, and expertise needed to address the unique challenges of your business. Total Document Solutions is independent, local, and well-connected to serve your office products and document needs. Call them today at 479-575-0770. That's 479-575-0770 for your Total Document Solutions.
Want to go back and listen to previous shows? Apple users can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. Don't have an Apple device? Head on over to paulharrell.com and click on Podcast. It's free and available 24/7 because the Liberty Machine never sleeps.
Hey, folks, so in an effort to draw attention to the victims of murder and not the inmates who are going to be executed, have been executed, Kenneth Williams is scheduled to be executed. According to Arkansas Attorney General Leslie Rutledge, there was so these Pennsylvania attorneys, they were upset that the jury in his case used a Bible to pray in their deliberations. The final inmate scheduled to die by lethal injection in Arkansas this month has been denied all requests for stays of execution by the state's highest court. So that is the news we can bring you. In an effort to bring awareness to the victims of these crimes instead of what most of the media is doing, I interviewed Cecil Boren's widow. Cecil Boren was murdered by Kenneth Williams, scheduled to die tomorrow. And I wanted to replay our interview from Monday when I went down to Grady, Arkansas. Listen to this. We're joined now by Jeannie Boren. She is the widow of Cecil Boren. And the reason she's agreed to talk to us today is, of course, the execution of Kenneth Williams, who's convicted of the murder of Cecil Boren, is this Thursday, April the 27th. And so, Jeannie, first of all, thank you so much for sitting down with us and talking to us.
You're quite welcome.
Talk a little bit about what the last basically 20 years have been like with Kenneth Williams, sitting on death row.
Well, of course, we've had at least one prior date set for his execution. It may have been more than that, but I know of one because it was January 4th of 2015, I believe. But we didn't get as far as the clemency hearings even at that time. We're just kind of like on, we know he's down there. Anytime we go south on Highway 65 or come back up the highway, I look over that way and know he's still sitting there, and hope he doesn't have the ability to escape again.
And that's the prison I kind of overshot when I was trying to come out here.
Right.
And it was not too far from where I was, correct?
It's the first group of buildings. That's Varner, and that's where Supermax is, where he is right now.
So in 1999, right?
October 3rd.
He was already serving
life in prison without parole for the killing of Dominique Hurd, a little cheerleader from UAPB.
And he escapes. And
18 days later.
Okay, and this is the place that he comes, and your husband, he murders your husband.
Right.
Was he, when he was sentenced for the murder, he was sentenced to death, and he wasn't sentenced to 18 years on death row?
No, he wasn't not. And that's why, if he had been sentenced to life in prison without parole, our family would have accepted that. We'd had to. But he had a jury of his peers give him the death penalty. And people can't do things without there being repercussions or penalties or something of that nature. And he needs to serve, or this sentence needs to be carried out since he was given the death penalty. And I'm a Christian, but I feel like that you have to be punished when you do wrong.
Yeah. So that's justice for you.
Right. Yeah. It won't be a happy day for me. I mean, not for anybody to be killed. I think there'll be some relief knowing that he can't escape again. And we were talking with someone yesterday, and they said, as if they could just build a prison that was escape-proof, then it might be okay to do away with the death penalty. But he's already proven he can get out. Mm-hmm. And he had already told someone he could not do life in prison without parole.
And some other things. I think that's one reason that Governor Hutchinson put together this Blue Ribbon Task Force, or whatever we're going to call it, to look at the entire tax code. I do think there's a lot to work with there, but I think we just have to make sure that we're doing the smart thing and do it with a little more long-term thinking.
State Representative Greg Leding, one more question because I know you got to go.
Okay.
All right, and I asked Scott Baltz, your Democrat colleague. He was on a couple weeks ago. I asked him the same question.
Okay.
So you got Senator Jake Files, who is the chair of Revenue and Tax, and he's been in the news a lot lately in a negative headline, $700,000 in liens and judgments against his company. You've got the GIF money that went to Fort Smith to build a softball complex. But then now contractors say he submitted false bids in their names. The city manager came out and said he gave Files $38,000 with no work done in a reasonable amount of time for new roofs. And then the IRS problem as well. Again, he's the chair of Revenue and Tax. You're a Democrat. He's a Republican. How come no one in the Democrat Party is calling for his resignation? What are your thoughts?
I honestly haven't followed all that closely enough to weigh in. It certainly does sound like there's something worth exploring there. But honestly, I don't know what necessarily good it would do for the few Democrats that are down there to call for his resignation. I think that's the kind of thing where it could easily just spiral into a back and forth where the parties just start attacking each other's members. I think if there truly is something, if there's truly been some wrongdoing there, authorities are going to get to it. And at that point, when we know something wrong has been done, then we can start calling for people to maybe step aside. But until there's something a little bit more concrete, I don't know that it's worth it.
Well, my only comment that I would add to that, and the reason I think this would be my motivation, because I think he should resign, because the amount of potential political leverage out there for anything he pushes, whether it's the internet tax or anything else, is just, in my opinion, so astronomical. It's just better safe than sorry. Because I feel like it calls a lot of policy goals into question. What are we really trying to accomplish? I'll give you the last word, sir.
No, I think that's perfectly fair, and who knows? Maybe there have been some discussions in the caucus about saying something publicly. My colleagues would probably tell you I'm not the best caucus member in terms of attending meetings, but I think people are just kind of watching it play out. But you're right. If it ever got to the point where we thought there was maybe too much leverage there, or that there was just a little too much smoke for there to be no fire, I think you would see some comments come from this side of the aisle.
State Representative Greg Leding, Democrat from Fayetteville, thanks for coming on first time. I hope we can do it again. Thanks for giving us your impression of the session.
Absolutely. You're welcome. Thanks.
All righty. Be safe. Folks, we got to take a break. Back in just a moment.
The Paul Harrell Program.
So, and then he left 18 days later, so.
Then it wasn't just on that day in 1999, it wasn't just your husband, Cecil, that was murdered. You also had another man in Missouri, correct? He stole the pickup.
Well, he came in here and he just pretty much took whatever he felt like taking. I was going to church, and he poured out all the drawers out of all the chests and everything, and he took every gun. He opened the gun cabinet and took all the guns out of the gun cabinet. He took my husband's college ring. He took his Masonic ring, our clothes. He even took some of my tennis shoes, because he wasn't near as big a man as Cecil was. And he took some of Cecil's clothes, but they would have been awfully big on him. But he did have I think some kind of jumpsuit type thing that camouflaged that zips up the front of Cecil's on when they finally caught him. So he took just whatever he wanted that was in our house. I'd just like to know how long he was here, because when I left, my husband was out way in the back working in his garden, and Kenneth Williams told the police that he was walking up to my house when he heard me walk out the door and start my car. So he hid until I left, or he would have killed me first. And then we had a neighbor that came by bringing me something before or after church, and she saw that my vehicle was gone and my husband's truck was gone, and she just turned around and left. But if Cecil's truck had been here, she would have come in and been killed. So it wasn't a fortunate day, but, it could have been worse.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, this may not be true, but I understood he even used Cecil's cell phone to call some of the jurors that had been on the jury to threaten them. The ones that had been on the prior, when Nikki was killed. And anyway, I think they called the prison and stuff. So in my mind, they could have probably, I don't know how quick they could have actually acted, but anyway, it could have possibly been stopped. But they said, no, there's no one out at the prison. And when the police got here, they were going on the assumption someone had driven off of the highway over here and done all that. And so, because I even had my little grandson with me. But I had left, when I got back from church, we had a carport at that time. I've now got alarm systems. I've got, the garage so that I can drive in and shut the door and keep my doors locked. And I'm just a fanatic. My kids call it a fortress here. But when I came in the door, I left him out there because he was asleep. I was going to come in and change shoes because I had heels on. I've got some steps. I didn't want to drop him. And when I got to the door, there's a glass door, and we kept the key on this side of the door so we could lock it, And the key had been taken out, put it on the other side of the door, locked, and then broken off in the door. But I finally got it open, and I came in, and I walked directly to the phone. We had a landline at that time. And Cecil had a little office down at Dumas. We were both retired. But he had a little office. He worked like half a day down there sometime. And I started calling him because he didn't normally ever go anywhere without telling me. And I called his cell phone. I called that office phone. And while I was on the phone, I was just looking around, and all those doors were open. And I had a computer armor over here, all open. Kitchen doors, all open. And I was not thinking anything, but just what in the world was Cecil doing? I just couldn't imagine him looking for something and leave all the doors open. And so I quit calling for a minute and thought I'll run change shoes and then I'll call him. And I went in to get some other shoes on. And when I got to my bedroom door, I hadn't even looked over there. That room you came in, that used to be my husband's hunting bathroom, is what we called it, because he had his deer heads in there and his hunting clothes and all that. And I had to make that a room so people could get in after I closed off the other. But I got to the door, and every dresser drawer was tumbled upside down. I walked around the bed and to the gun cabinet. It was empty. So I called the sheriff's office and said, we have been robbed. Called my neighbor that lived around, because she was my first cousin's wife, that lived around this gravel road, and she came over. She's the one that had come by here that morning. And so she got here, and she said, let's go outside. Don't go back in the house. Let's stay outside. And don't go in the outbuildings. I was just thinking at that point, maybe somebody had come over and robbed us, and Cecil was chasing them, or I never thought anything about death. And so we were walking around outside, but from the back of the garden, back up this way, and I said, I'm going to run call and see, because it took them 45 minutes to get anybody here. And so I was on the phone calling the sheriff's office again, and I heard her scream. And he had drug his body down by that bayou where it kind of goes like that to make it harder for us to find him, I guess. Because he shot him as he came in, started in that door in the chest right here. And he ran and got to that grass right there, up there, and fell. I don't know if he was shooting him all the way or if he shot him. Emptied the gun, 6 bullets in his back. But he was on the grass, and then he drug him down there. I never saw drag marks. I wasn't looking for it. Blood on the grass, they saw it, but I mean, I never saw it. He left it where, other than the mess in the house, that you wouldn't have seen it outside. But as I said, it was a horrific day, and my girls they didn't say it was they had a hard time coming here for a while. Mm-hmm. And I know my older daughter testified all she could see was yellow tape when she drove up here, because we had to get the girls here. But it was, has been awful.
You mentioned about the prison and him making a phone call. I guess I don't understand.
Okay, he had Cecil's cell phone.
Right.
That was in the truck too. And I said, someone has told me, somebody else called the prison to ask if anybody was out, and he was a friend of his. He had maybe not been at work. He said no. I guess he thought it would have been alerted if there had been. I was told he used the cell phone. I'm not sure of that. Well, he may have waited till he got somewhere else to call. That he had even called some of the jurors that was on the other, threatening them, that was on the other trial. I don't know that to be a fact.
Okay.
I've heard that. Mm-hmm. But he didn't answer the phone anytime I called. He was
right.
Smart enough not to do that. But, the prison, they were going on under the assumption that somebody off the street, that came over here and did all this. The police.
So they were not going under the assumption that it was him.
No. They didn't know anybody was gone. We were outside so the police could go over everything or whatever till, even though it was October 3rd, it was warm and the mosquitoes were terrible. So about 8:30, they finally let us come back in the house. So we started trying to clean up. He had just destroyed the bathroom. And he left one of his old dirty socks in there under the pile. And that's why I never have believed the story about the slop wagon, because if he had come out that way, I never made a deal about that, because he had escaped. They let him, that's it. But his clothes would not have been white when he crossed that highway, nor would that sock would have reeked of garbage, I just will never believe that, but that's just
the way he escaped from prison.
I think somebody brought him out. He got out right across the road from a little telephone, some AT&T building, a little building that's.
So you're saying his clothes that you found here?
No, we only found a sock here.
You think it would have been much dirtier had he come out the way they said?
Right. The man that said, I saw somebody in a white uniform cross. Well, the tank full of slop. His clothes are not, they're going to be brown.
So
dingy.
How long from the time that the police were here did they realize that he was actually gone?
About 9 o'clock, as we were cleaning up, about 9 o'clock, we heard the bloodhounds. And they were up the corner, just barking. And then right after that, the sheriff's office came here and told us. Took them all day long. On Sundays, they didn't do but one count or some kind of something. And so now I think they do.
He probably knew that they only did one count.
And he had planned because that little telephone building I was talking about. He had told this cousin of his to bring him. He said, "I can't do life in prison without parole." He said, "Bring me some women's clothes and a wig." I put behind this telephone building. And he got there was nothing there because this cousin of his was already in bad trouble with the police. And he was scared to do that. In fact, he did testify at our trial, but he really didn't want to testify. But anyway, Kenneth Williams, when he left here, he went by that guy's house and said, "Why didn't you bring me those clothes? I had to kill a man to get away." So, but I don't know if they probably couldn't have stopped it, but if they'd have known that he was gone, but that quick, because I left here like 9:30 going to church.
Well, I really
been a long 18 years.
Yeah, been a long 18 years, unnecessary.
Yeah.
18 years.
And see, I've lived here all my life. My grandfather built this house, and my mother was raised here. I was raised here. My kids were raised here. So people would ask me, "Are you going to stay there?" And where was I to go? This is my family home. So that's why I've got all the taking all the precautions and things.
If he would have been already executed, I don't know, say 15 years ago, or instead of 20, or maybe maybe a year after he was sentenced or something like that. I mean, would you have closure, you think, at this point?
Well, I'm not really sure what closure is. I mean, I don't think we're going to, the minute he dies, that he's going to leave our mind. I think we will always think about that. But I think we'll have a little peace, to know that he can't do something like that again. He's already killed 4 people, and he's supposedly become a Christian and is a minister. I don't know who he ministers to, because he's supposed to be in Supermax in a cell for 23 hours a day, but that's not for me to make that judgment if he's become a preacher or not. But he used the excuse to get out to go to church or do something the morning that he escaped. So, I feel like if he ever gets out again, he'll revert right back to what he was.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, I saw it. I was doing some reading on this, and I saw that the Pine Bluff commercial, they reported on the 2005 letter where he claimed to be a born-again Christian.
Right.
And
he did tell them about another murder that he had committed.
Mm-hmm, yeah,
or they never might have never known.
That's true. He confessed to another murder they didn't know about.
Right.
And so at this point, would you agree that, if he is in fact a Christian, that
he should be ready to meet his maker?
Exactly. It's in God's hands.
Right. Right.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things I've been, going back and forth over, and I just kind of rest in in God's sovereignty over the whole situation.
And so many with the protesters against the death penalty and things I read on Facebook, I probably should just stay off of it, but saying, they don't believe in the death penalty. And there was a really long article in there about it, and I just had to make a comment that, if any of these protesters had lost their father, their husband, the grandfather to their children, I think they would have a different attitude about this. I don't know that they would. Some people still say that they don't like the death penalty when they've lost someone, but it's something to ponder, because if you haven't walked in our shoes, you just don't know how we feel.
And I can see behind you, you've got 3 grandchildren in that photograph right there.
That's it, yeah.
And they haven't had their grandfather here all this time.
My granddaughter Morgan was 6 years old at the time.
There's all this talk about the inmates, because it's not just Kenneth Williams. There are others, and there was one last week, and it doesn't seem like the media is focusing very much on the victims, the ones who actually have lost something. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, personally, I don't care if they ever mention me at all in this, because it's not for notoriety or anything else. We're just trying to get through this. So, yeah, I've noticed that it's all about cruel and unusual punishment and that type of thing. I don't think one of the murderers stopped to think about the pain and treatment that they were given to the victims.
Yeah, I don't.
Actually, with Kenneth Williams, my husband was way out in the back working. He could have come up here. My husband kept a gun in his truck, a lot of money in his truck. I'm sure the key was either in the truck or where he could have found it quickly. And here, he could have left with all that. I guess it wasn't going to give him enough time to get away. But he didn't have to do it. He could have tied Cecil up. Because he caught him unaware. He was fixing to walk in this door after coming in from the gardening. And there were other routes he could have taken. And I read where Dominique and Heard and her friend that he drove away a little ways and then thought he just wanted to know how it would be to kill somebody. He could have driven off and taken their stuff, and it would have taken him a while to get back to town, and he would have, maybe gotten caught, maybe not, I don't know, but he thought nothing of these people's lives, I wouldn't treat my pets I would never shoot a pet even.
Yeah.
And I don't know how a human can shoot another human when they've done them no wrong.
And yet, there's a lot of this talk about the drugs that are used, the cocktail that's used to put these men to death, and yet you look at the violence that they used to put, and they weren't worried. And it just seems so strange that we're so concerned about this drug or that drug, and the drug company now saying you can't use it for that, and you kind of just wonder, wow, our priorities seem to be completely out of whack.
That's correct. Is it tonight when they have the executions of the two?
Yes, they're
scheduled.
It's scheduled for tonight.
Right.
And then
I'm just so afraid that the medicine's not going to work properly on them, as they've said, because they were so big, and then mess up. Then they'll stop. And
I hadn't thought of that. That's a concern. Yeah, I see what you're saying, because that is the concern, that you have some big inmates, and maybe it's not going to work on them.
Right. So it worked good the other night, apparently, just from what I've read. So hopefully that they will be able to. And I don't know, because they could come up with all kind of appeals of some type, but I can't think of that many appeals that Kenneth Williams could come up with. Other than the drugs they've talked about over and over, and he's been involved in all of those. So we'll just see, and if not, this time, maybe next time.
Right.
We're not thinking it's going to happen for sure, because we don't want to be that disappointed. But hopefully this time it will happen.
I just from a personal standpoint, I have no problem with the death penalty. It did kind of make me a little uneasy to try to, at first, to try to kind of compact it all into such a short amount of time, especially with how sensitive everybody is. And I was like, well, I don't even think this is ever going to get done, just because people, I think it's a minority of people, but they are so vocal about it. They're louder than I think the majority of folks who do agree with the death penalty. But I was kind of just uncomfortable of the assembly line. But actually, honestly, I just have to say, Mrs. Bourne, after talking to you and actually, seeing a victim firsthand, it's like, that is such a insignificant concern when you think about it.
It's been like almost 18 long years. Mm-hmm. And got one child with two that have graduated, one that's gotten married, one that's fixing to have a baby any day now, a grandchild. And you think about that, the fact that he's had to miss all that, and they've missed it. Mm-hmm. So
yeah. Well, Jeannie Bourne, thank you so much for speaking with me today. I really do appreciate it.
Good morning. Good morning. Congratulations, you have made it to the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language, where we strive to offer politicians the very best in ambiguously specific language, the purpose of which is to allow our politician bosses to grow government and keep their constituents in the dark. This yields two beneficial outcomes. First, the government-growing politicians stay in office, and second, we at the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language get to remain in the shadows and get to keep our jobs. Now, it's time for technocrat training drills. Johnny?
Yes?
A politician wants to use the healthcare system to punish those who have and redistribute their wealth. What is the appropriate language to use in this situation to make an unpopular idea acceptable to the public?
I would emphasize that these ideas would make their healthcare more affordable and make sure the public understands if they already have adequate healthcare, nothing will change for them.
Very good, Johnny. Much progress since last time. Next up, let's have Susie. Susie, your politician has been caught in, dare I say it, a lie.
What kind of a lie?
It doesn't really matter, but in the spirit of the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language, I will give you a good hypothetical scenario. Dozens of politicians have been thrown out of office for supporting a socialist health care program. So the remaining politicians get together and they pass a bill to, quote, end the program, end quote. But they really want to keep it. What should they do, Susie?
May I ask a question for more information?
Certainly.
Has the word lie been used by the political opposition?
Yes.
I know. They should change the name of the program. Maybe use the word works to make the sheeple think it's for working folk. Then they should go on the attack and get the public distracted. I would advise the politician to publicly question why our political dialogue has become so uncivilized and tell them to claim using the word lie, no matter how accurate, is a personal attack on his or her character. And if they admit to any wrongdoing at all, they must replace the word lie with words like misspoke, misstatement, misrepresent, or mislead.
Amazing! Excellent work, Susie. I feel like the student has really become the teacher. You will make a terrific addition to the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language.
All hands on deck. This is a Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language emergency. Several politicians are scrambling after being exposed by some talk radio host. Let's move it, people. They need our help.
The Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language. You vote 'em in, and we keep 'em in. PHP Parody.
All right, folks, welcome back. Thanks so much for being with us. And that was our interview. If you're just joining us, or I'm sorry, if you've been with us for the last half hour or so, that was our interview with Jeannie Bourne. It's up on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Paul Talk Show. That's facebook.com/Paul Talk Show. Parts 1, 2, and 3. You guys heard the whole thing, but we've got 3 YouTube videos out there. The first one is posted, and then in the comments section, parts 2 and 3 are posted if you want to share those out. And it's a way to focus on what actually happened, the actual crimes that were committed versus what the media wants you to, have the sympathy for. I mean, when you hear how Cecil Bourne died, you're not really as concerned about when we're talking about the justice of a jury, of his peers saying you're sentenced to death. It's at that point you're kind of like, really, are we really going to get this upset about a drug that's used? Anyway, it's just really frustrating. Our Liberty Machine T-shirts are for sale at paulharrell.com. Liberty Machine T-shirts for sale. They're really good, sharp-looking shirts. They got the website on the back. They also have a outline of the state of Arkansas with the Liberty Machine gears, just the gears inside the state. It says Building a Liberty Machine, paulharrell.com. On the pocket on the front, it just says PHP, Paul Harrell Program. People are going to say, what does that mean? And then you can tell them. That's what we want you to do. And get them now while the internet sales tax doesn't affect us. Or does it? paulharrell.com. Click on store. Folks, we got to go. For our Mountain Talk 97 audience, you guys have one more hour coming your way next, our 4 o'clock hour for the rest of Arkansas. Thank you guys for listening. We can't do the show without you. Be safe. See you tomorrow.